at
Yeah,
all.
that's a great point. And so even in terms of like splitting off in the road signs that Google gives you,
Mhm.
ad strength is a big one, right? But let's talk about that for a minute. So the findings that we have, and we talked to a lot of people, and even Google says this, but ad strength is an indicator based off of the history of all the ads they've seen in the past. It tells you, oh, you don't have enough variety or you don't have enough headlines, because we generally see that 15 headlines gives you more incremental conversions. And we've measured that to be true, right? So, but this is what the machine learning system is meant to do. It says, compared to the average of every single advertiser we've seen over the past year or two, that's a lot of advertisers. But based on that, we think you should be doing X, right? But like Julie's saying, well, no, you're your own business. If you're Nike and you say, hey, we should try this new slogan, just do it. Well, the machine learning system from Google would say that's dumb. That's going to have bad ad strength, right? Because it's never seen anyone do that. But that doesn't mean it's a bad marketing decision. And so I think ad strength, if you're not sophisticated, it's a great guideline. It kind of gets you within the lanes of what Google expects most people to do. But if you're sophisticated and you listen to this episode, you think about marketing quite a bit, then use that with a huge grain of salt. I mean, do what you think is the right thing, and then use actual metrics to decide if that's working or not. Ad strength, by the way, if you put in the greatest ad campaign ever, it'll not change its opinion on what's actually happening from the data. It's just looking back at history. Anyway, Mark, thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, like, part of this is like, how does Google communicate a sophisticated, subjective notion of, are people going to respond to this ad, based off of a checklist? Ad strength really is just Google going through and checking, does your combination of ads hit some kind of criteria? Google wants to get people out of the box of like writing one ad with with 3 headlines and 2 descriptions. So it wants to make sure that everyone's like embracing this and embracing some of its best practices. But we all know that best practices are often meant to be broken. You're going to get good ad strength if you put your keywords, you put DKI into your headlines here. Is that going to be the best ad that you've ever read in your life? No. And that's just kind of what this is it's a checklist that Google's created a guideline for people who are new to this to get started. But that doesn't mean that.
So we had a former colleague of yours, Nava Hopkins. She gave us the screenshot, but she did an experiment and she was like, well, I'm going to add all 15 headlines and I'm going to make them pretty unique and varied, and the description, same thing. But I'm not going to say anything. There's no keywords being used in these ad texts. And the only issue the machine had with that was the lack of the keywords. But it was like, oh yeah, 15 random headlines. Fantastic. They're random. They're not similar to each other. So checkbox, right? But that's kind of the problem. Is it's kind of a dumb system, and you can all do better than that. Julie, I bet you don't look at ad strength too much.
No, and I think that the part that irritates me is it's presented as being so much more sophisticated and smarter than it is. And I think that's the part that really sticks in my craw, because we understand that just because Google says, fill in the blank, right? It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's exactly what you should do, right? Like, we have a perspective that allows us to evaluate critically what we're being told based on what we're seeing in accounts, based on what what our experience is, and that type of thing. I think the part that is troubling is that if you don't have somebody on your team who's working on your account who has that level of experience or sophistication, and you were to just go by the documentation and the information that's shared, from Google, and then these prompts and things that you get inside of the UI, and frankly, inside of Google Ads editor is really harsh. It tells you have violations when all you're doing is doing stuff that's against, what Google's best practice is. So I think there's a lot that goes on inside of the Google Ads ecosystem that if you don't have the knowledge base, you could be steered in a direction where what you're doing is good for Google, but it may not be that great for the advertiser.
It's just really fanatical that over the last couple of years, the Google Ads platform has become a sales enablement tool for Google Ads more than anything else. I of course remember that used to be the case with like your certification exams with some pieces of Google Ads in here, but now it's one of those things like you can't turn a corner without Google trying to sell you something along the way here.
Yeah, everybody wants to make more money, right? So
I mean, hey, I feel it.